You dare underestimate this old man. The black-robed elder roared in fury as he saw the thunderous beam infused with the power of reincarnation. Vast spiritual energy surged as he swung a palm directly at the tiny beam. Yet, as the beam passed through his fingers, the elder only saw a flash of lightning before his index finger was severed, accompanied by a spurt of blood. Even though we hail from what you condescendingly call a lower dimension, don't look down on us. Thunder Lord's righteous voice resounded. Scoundrels! As a dignified second-grade supreme, losing a finger to two opponents who hadn't even formed their supreme dharmakayas enraged the black-robed elder. Torrential spiritual energy surged as he summoned a massive dharmakaya with clenched fists, shattering the incoming thunder arrows. Then, with a terrifyingly powerful punch, he launched an enraged assault at the Lord of Life and Death. Boom! The punch, condensed from spiritual energy, distorted space as it barreled toward the two lords. Reacting swiftly, they summoned spiritual energy to resist, but the devastating force of the punch was overwhelming. In an instant, the two spat blood and were sent hurtling backward, clearly severely injured. I'll slaughter you both. The black-robed elder bellowed, unwilling to relent. With another sweep of his hand, he unleashed a colossal 1,000-foot spiritual energy palm, aiming to crush the two lords. Its sheer power left even other second-grade supreme experts feeling apprehensive. If struck, the Lords of Life and Death would undoubtedly face death or permanent crippling. It was evident the elder intended to kill. This round, we of the martial god sect concede. Just as the spiritual energy palm neared, a sharp cry rang out from the martial god sect side. In the next moment, Flame Lord and others dashed forward, unleashing their most potent attacks to intercept the palm. The sudden turn of events caused a stir among the surrounding mountains. However, another cold snort broke through the commotion. In battle, casualties are inevitable. Whether you concede or not isn't for you to decide. The two you sent into the fray never uttered a word of surrender. The speaker was none other than Zhang Tian, sect master of Wu Yuan sect. Raising his hand, he summoned an overwhelming spiritual energy far surpassing an ordinary supreme, hurtling it toward Flame Lord and the others. Though it seemed to block their intervention, the force alone could severely injure a second-grade supreme. Clang! At that moment, a sharp sword light shot out from behind the martial god sect, tearing through the heavens and shattering the spiritual energy wave. The residual sword energy even crossed thousands of feet to strike the colossal spiritual energy palm, obliterating it completely. Considering your association with the Great Thousand Alliance, the four profound continents set up this battlefield as an opportunity for you. As the energy waves dissipated, Zhang Tian's gaze turned toward a serene figure seated at the rear of the martial god sect, Ling Qingzhu. It was she who had unleashed the formidable sword energy. As a grand elder of the martial god sect, such interference seems inappropriate, doesn't it? Zhang Tian's stern voice echoed. Sect Master Zhang, our side has already conceded the battle. Is there any need to press further? Ling Qingzhu replied as she slowly rose, her strength yet to recover fully from earlier combat. That said, we admit to breaking the rules of engagement. What verdict do you suggest, Sect Master Zhang? You've lost this second match, Zhang Tian stated flatly. Indeed, we've lost this round. Ling Qingzhu's calm acknowledgement left the Lord of Life and Death and Thunder Lord visibly unwilling to accept the result. Despite their utmost efforts, they failed to secure even a draw. Moreover, there are still 2 battles to go. However, I believe both sides are weary of this sequential rotation. Why don't we conduct the final 2 matches simultaneously? Zhang Tian proposed as 2 figures leaped forward from behind him. The Flame Lord spoke, and his figure was the first to move, darting forward. Seeing this, the other 2 lords, along with Qingzhi, followed suit. Under the watchful eyes of all the martial god sect's powerhouses, the battlefield ahead split into 2 combat zones. Qingzhi and the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness took on a first-grade supreme, while the Dark Lord and the Flame Lord faced off against the remaining second-grade supreme. Thus, the final battle officially began. Meanwhile, as the eastern regions of the four profound continents were abuzz with the clash between the martial god sect and the Wu Yuan sect and their allied forces. Far away, tens of millions of miles beyond the four profound continents and the heaven-desolate continent, lay a vast ocean within the wandering realm. At this moment, the space above this massive ocean was warped and twisted, spanning an area no less than 1,000,000 miles wide. The sight was immensely striking, and the distorted space created an intimidating aura, preventing anyone from venturing within a radius of several million miles. However, if a powerful cultivator were to step into this warped space, they would see a colossal super-spirit array, 1,000,000 feet in size, slowly rotating above. Above it hung an enormous black hole, from which a massive waterfall of celestial energy, tens of thousands of feet wide, cascaded downward. Beneath the waterfall, another enormous black hole, inscribed with intricate runes, continuously devoured the torrent of celestial energy. This process of absorption had already lasted for an entire month. Crash! At that moment, the celestial energy waterfall from above suddenly began to thin until, minutes later, it completely ceased. The figure seated beneath the devouring black hole slowly opened his eyes. The young man's pupils gleamed with seven-colored radiance, as though they could pierce through the fabric of the universe itself. Lin Dong raised his head to look at the gradually shrinking black hole above him. He knew that its disappearance signified the complete destruction of the Wu Yuan dimension. If any trace remained, it would only be within the memories of those who once lived there. Heh, what a near-perfect superdimension. It actually allowed you to ascend to such heights. A faint chuckle suddenly sounded from nearby. In midair not far away, a spirit formed entirely from celestial energy floated, appearing as a youthful boy. However, the aura he exuded carried the weight of countless millennia. It was the leader of the Great Thousand Alliance. I only absorbed about 10% of the energy during the dimensional baptism, Lin Dong replied as he slowly stood up, clenching his fist. The sensation was intoxicating. He felt as though he could effortlessly obliterate the alien demon emperor of the past hundreds, even thousands of times over. This immense power was merely the result of absorbing 1/10 of the Wu Yuan dimension's energy, yet it was far beyond anything he had achieved before. Heh, be content. Back when I underwent the dimensional baptism, I only absorbed 3% of the energy. You've already surpassed me by several times, the Alliance leader said with a laugh. What about our people from the dimension? Lin Dong asked. With your current strength, do you still need to ask me? The Alliance leader responded. Hearing this, Lin Dong closed his eyes. His awareness rapidly expanded, stretching across the surrounding heavens and earth. When his perception reached tens of millions of miles away, his expression subtly shifted. Every detail of the four profound continents was now imprinted in his mind. It seems the natives of that continent don't give much face to our Great Thousand Alliance, the Alliance leader remarked with a smile. For matters like this, I think it's better if you handle it yourselves. After all, the Great Thousand Alliance and the Primordial Divine Clan have an agreement not to interfere in any disputes within the Great Thousand Worlds. However, just as the Alliance leader thought Lin Dong would immediately head toward the distant four profound continents, he saw Lin Dong summon a crystalline bead radiating a frosty aura. The bead's chill appeared to be pointing in a specific direction, unaffected by the winds and waves around it. Buzz. As Lin Dong retrieved the ice bead, a pale blue light emanated from it, causing his heart to tremble. It's Huan Huan. It's Huan Huan. Lin Dong's usual composure gave way to excitement. At this location, the bead that Huan Huan had entrusted to the Lord of Life and Death was now responding. This meant that Huan Huan's reincarnation fragment was not far from here. Is there anything related to this icy aura in that direction? Lin Dong asked the Alliance leader, pointing toward the direction indicated by the bead. The person you're searching for, are they tied to this icy energy? The Alliance leader pondered as he gazed in the direction Lin Dong indicated. His eyes narrowed slightly as he replied, There's nothing within the wandering realm related to such icy energy. What race is it? Lin Dong asked. After a moment of contemplation, the Great Thousand Alliance master calmly replied, the Ice Spirit Clan. In the eastern region of the four profound continents, a fiery commotion erupted within a mountain range. Everyone's attention was drawn to two massive battle zones in the mountains, where no one dared to approach within a 1,000-mile radius. The conflict between the dominant power of the four profound continents, the Wu Yuan sect, and its allied top-tier forces against the martial god sect, which had broken through the barriers of a super dimension, had reached its final stages. The outcome of the last two battles being fought simultaneously would soon determine the victor. In one of the battle zones, towering flames surged into tidal waves, engulfing a radius of thousands of miles and transforming the land into a sea of fire. Beneath the fire, the ground was saturated with dark energy. In midair, three figures fought ferociously. However, the white-robed first-grade supreme from the Wu Yuan sect held his own against the combined assault of the Flame Lord and the Dark Lord. Above the Flame Lord, a colossal fiery palm, thousands of feet large, took shape, its flames an eerie black. This fire was the result of the Flame Lord's enlightenment during his breakthrough of the triple reincarnation tribulation. Formed by fusing the spiritual energy of the Great Thousand Worlds, the death mystique power of the Wu Yuan dimension, and cultivated through the power of reincarnation, it was named Death Mystique Spirit Flame. Even contact with the spiritual energy of the Great Thousand Worlds would be instantly incinerated by it. The Dark Lord, equally formidable, had ascended to greater heights due to the tempering effects of spiritual energy assimilation on his body. Don't hold back. Use all your strength, the Flame Lord roared. The massive fiery palm of Death Mystique Spirit Flame slammed toward the first-grade supreme. Boom! The Dark Lord, showing no intention of conserving his strength, unleashed a colossal beam of light engraved with black runes. It carried the power to shatter the earth and shot directly toward the white-robed middle-aged man. The Dark Lord understood all too well that holding back now would only push the martial god sect closer to the brink of destruction. The giant black flame palm and the immense beam of darkness surged toward the white-robed man, warping the space around them. "Heh, this is interesting," the white-robed man remarked with a grin as he watched the two formidable attacks hurtling toward him. Particularly intrigued by the Flame Lord's fire, which he had neither seen nor heard of before, he noted its strength was enough to rank among the top 200 flames on the Myriad Flames ranking. Swish! As the devastating assaults closed in, the white-robed man flipped his palm, and a long black sword appeared in his hand. The aura emanating from the sword signified it was a quasi-intermediate divine artifact. Buzz! With the divine weapon in hand, a massive supreme sea materialized behind the white-robed man. Within the sea, waves formed by spiritual energy surged upward, condensing into a colossal 1,000-foot sword shadow in the sky. Its sharp, terrifying aura distorted the very fabric of space. As the sword shadow appeared, the black sword in the man's hand slashed through the air. Simultaneously, a deep voice echoed from his lips, "Sky-splitting art." Clang! A chilling sound of the sword's edge cut through the air. The colossal sword shadow pierced through the sky, colliding with the black flame palm and the beam of darkness. The moment of impact was eerily silent. Then, under the horrified gazes of the Flame Lord and the Dark Lord, the black flame palm was penetrated. "Dark Lord, retreat!" the Flame Lord shouted urgently. However, before the words fully left his mouth, the Dark Lord failed to react in time. A sharp sword strike severed his arm, sending it plummeting. "My apologies, but I understand the principle of going all out, even against a rabbit," the white-robed man said coldly, a chilling smile spreading across his face. Having neutralized the Flame Lord's assault and severed the Dark Lord's arm, he radiated an aura of overwhelming dominance. The sky-splitting art was one of his most powerful techniques, capable of holding off a newly ascended second-grade supreme in the past, let alone dealing with the Flame Lord and the Dark Lord, who had only recently entered the supreme stage. Grievously injured, the Dark Lord stumbled backward, his blood staining the ground red. "You wretch! I have always respected my opponents," the white-robed man sneered coldly, his sleeve flicking as the supreme sea behind him transformed into a colossal vortex of spiritual energy, thousands of feet wide. From within it, a massive figure wreathed in lightning stepped forth. Golden Thunder Dharmakaya. Boom. The moment the white-robed man unleashed his supreme Dharmakaya, a deafening explosion resounded from thousands of miles away. The void of space, spanning several thousand feet, collapsed, revealing a golden figure over 1,000 feet tall falling from the shattered void. Amid the scattering fragments of space, two figures were sent hurtling backward, blood spurting from their mouths. They crashed into over a dozen mountain peaks, leaving devastation in their wake before finally coming to a halt. Not far away, countless members of the martial god sect gazed in terror at the ravaged battlefield. Even the Lord of Life and Death and others were stunned, their eyes fixed on the battered figures of the Lord of Qingji and the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness lying amidst the ruins. Moments earlier, the Qingji Lord had used spatial power to trap the second Great Supreme in a void, while the Primordial Wilderness Lord attempted to sever all sensory connections using the Primordial Realm. Their plan had been to temporarily contain the second Great Supreme and then aid the Flame Lord and another ally. With the combined strength of the four lords, they were confident of defeating the white-robed First Grade Supreme. Once victorious, they could turn their focus on the remaining Second Grade Supreme, ensuring at least a tie for the martial god sect. Victory would save them from surrendering over 1 million drops of supreme spiritual liquid, as the Wu Yuan sect had promised that a tie would count as a win for the martial god sect. However, to their shock, the second grade supreme had broken free almost immediately by summoning his supreme Dharmakaya. The desolate void collapsed under its might, and within less than 10 exchanges, the Primordial Wilderness Lord and Qingji Lord were utterly defeated. Damn it! Are we destined to lose? Qingji gritted his teeth in fury. The expressions of the martial god sect disciples darkened. As newcomers to the Great Thousand Worlds, they now realized how powerless they were against the well-established forces of this vast realm. Sister Qingzhu, what should we do? Qingtan and others grew increasingly anxious, casting worried glances at Ling Qingzhu, who was seated in meditation, recovering her energy. Biting her silver teeth, Qingtan muttered, "When Brother Lin Dong returns, he'll teach these guys a lesson." Haha, have you prepared the 1,000,000 drops of supreme spiritual liquid yet? Zhang Tian laughed heartily, glancing at Ling Qingzhu and the others. Victory was within their grasp. Once the white-robed man defeated the Flame Lord, the martial god sect's hopes would crumble, and the Wu Yuan sect would emerge victorious. Boom! A towering wave of flames surged forth, containing the entirety of the Flame Lord's strength as it roared toward the Golden Thunder Dharmakaya. Do you think such power can harm my supreme Dharmakaya? Even if I stood here and let you strike, what difference would it make? The white-robed man sneered, his Golden Thunder Dharmakaya standing unmoving with arms crossed. The onrushing tide of flames was utterly ignored. Damn it! Furious at being dismissed, the Flame Lord's face twisted with rage. Yet, he knew that even his full-strength attack was likely incapable of breaching the Golden Thunder Dharmakaya's defenses. Use my strength. A faint voice suddenly echoed in the Flame Lord's mind. At the same time, Ling Qingzhu, sitting among the martial god sect members, trembled, her beautiful eyes snapping open. Startled by the voice in his head, the Flame Lord froze. Despair gave way to a crazed grin that spread across his face. On the opposing side, the white-robed man frowned at the Flame Lord's sudden smile. Has he gone mad, facing imminent defeat? He mused. But his expression shifted drastically in the next moment. Boom! An explosive surge of power erupted from within the Flame Lord, his aura skyrocketing at an alarming rate. Crimson runes surfaced across his body. This is impossible. The white-robed man's shock was palpable. In his perception, the Flame Lord's aura had already surpassed the limits of a first-grade supreme. It was still climbing. Mid-second grade supreme. Peak of second grade supreme. Third grade supreme. Fourth grade supreme. In mere moments, the Flame Lord's power soared to the level of a fourth grade supreme. What's happening? Zhang Tian, on the Wu Yuan sect side, was equally horrified by this unprecedented surge in strength. A terrifying thought crossed his mind. However, since the Flame Lord possesses such power, Why does the martial god sect still need to negotiate with the Wu Yuan sect? With this strength, combined with Ling Qingzhu, the martial god sect could easily stand as an equal to the Wu Yuan sect. Boom! A massive tide of flames, towering tens of thousands of feet high, surged towards the golden thunder Dharmakaya of the man in white robes. As expected, this wave of power merely caused the Dharmakaya to tremble slightly before dissipating completely. However, all attention had already shifted away from this minor flame tide, focusing instead on the Flame Lord, whose sudden transformation had caused this upheaval. How dare you harm so many of our fellow brothers and sisters? A low, furious voice rang out from the Flame Lord not far away. As he spoke, his right hand stretched directly towards the golden thunder Dharmakaya. Whoosh! A force of firepower nearly 10 times stronger than before erupted from the Flame Lord's body. Towering black flames engulfed the sky, forming an enormous dragon claw stretching nearly 10,000 feet. Its sheer strength tore through the void as it bore down upon the golden thunder Dharmakaya. Golden thunder Dharmakaya, disperse. Realizing that this full-force attack rivaling that of a 4th grade supreme was unstoppable, the white-robed man immediately activated his power to dissolve his supreme Dharmakaya in shock. Yet, he was still a step too slow. The massive black flame dragon claw, dozens of times larger than the supreme Dharmakaya, descended above its bald head. The terrifying force severed the spatial connection between the white-robed man and his Dharmakaya. Swish! Just as the black flame dragon claw was about to strike the golden thunder Dharmakaya, a sharp sound pierced the air. A golden figure, blazing across the sky for thousands of miles, appeared beneath the dragon claw. Golden light surged, forming a massive lotus 1,000 feet wide in an attempt to block the Flame Lord's black flame dragon claw. The newcomer was none other than the 2nd grade supreme, who had just dealt with the Lord of the Primordial Wilderness and Qingji. Since you've come, let's fight together. Without hesitation, the Flame Lord slammed the dragon claw down at the arriving 2nd grade supreme. A full-force attack from a 4th grade supreme was something neither a 1st grade supreme nor a 2nd grade supreme could withstand, even when joining forces. When the devastating power struck their 2 supreme Dharmakayas, the duo realized just how terrifying it truly was. Boom! The flaming claw obliterated everything within 1,000 miles, transforming the land into a sea of black flames. The ground collapsed, creating a massive crater thousands of feet wide. In the center of the devastation, the 2 supreme Dharmakayas were shattered to pieces. Since a supreme Dharmakaya is intrinsically linked to its wielder, the destruction of their Dharmakayas caused the 2 supreme experts from the Wu Yuan sect to spew blood violently. Their bodies were flung backward, crashing into 2 distant mountains. The impact was so tremendous that both peaks crumbled, leaving the 2 experts gravely injured from the Flame Lord's single strike. The entire mountain range fell silent. The Flame Lord's sudden outburst of power, defeating 2 supreme experts of the Wu Yuan sect in a single move, stunned everyone in the mountains. The martial god sect side was left in disbelief. Clearly, no one had expected this outcome. Everyone knew that the Flame Lord, like the other 4 lords in Qingji, had just recently entered the supreme stage. There was no reason to suspect that he had been hiding his strength. Yet, moments later, a wave of euphoria swept through the martial god sect. With Ling Qingzhu's earlier victory, the martial god sect now stood at 2 wins and 2 losses, tying with the Wu Yuan sect. According to their prior agreement, this meant that the martial god sect would not have to immediately surrender the 1,000,000 drops of supreme spiritual liquid. On the other hand, the Wu Yuan sect was in disbelief as they stared at the martial god sect. Zhang Tian, in particular, was baffled by how the Flame Lord's power had surged more than tenfold in an instant, allowing him to obliterate 2 supreme Dharmakayas with a single strike. Russell. Just as Zhang Tian was grappling with his shock, the Flame Lord, standing tall in front of everyone, suddenly had his aura plummet like a deflating balloon. His complexion turned ashen, and within a dozen breaths, his energy fell to the level of the heaven transformation stage. Thud. Under the countless gazes from the heavens and earth, the Flame Lord, unable to sustain his strength, staggered and finally collapsed unconscious from overexertion. This sight caused another uproar, while the expressions of the Wu Yuan sect shifted from disbelief to mocking glee. Heh, it seems the heavens do not favor your martial god sect. Zhang Tian stood up, looking across at Ling Qingzhu and the others. Zhang Tian's words caused many people present to nod in agreement. If the Flame Lord could still stand tall after defeating two supreme experts of the Wu Yuan sect, then the martial god sect would have been declared the winner of this wager with 2 victories and 2 losses. However, with the Flame Lord now unconscious, the martial god sect's position had shifted to 1 win, 1 draw, and 2 losses. What are you saying, Sect Master Zhang? It was clearly the Flame Lord who defeated your side first. Even though he later fell unconscious, that was after achieving victory. The Lord of Life and Death looked at Zhang Tian, his voice deep and tinged with anger as it spread through the air. Are you, the master of this continent, intending to twist the rules? Heh, this wager never stated that the first to fall would be deemed the loser. If your side still has someone standing, this battle could count as your victory. Unfortunately, with both sides down and no one standing, it's a legitimate draw, Zhang Tian retorted with a smile after hearing the Lord of Life and Death's rebuke. You claim I am twisting the rules, but why not admit you are the one grasping at straws? Who said no one is standing? Just as Zhang Tian's words fell, a booming voice suddenly rang out from the battlefield between the 2 sides, reverberating across the heavens. Hearing this voice, countless gazes from the mountain ranges turned toward the central battleground. Both the martial god sect and the Wu Yuan sect followed suit. When Zhang Tian of the Wu Yuan sect caught sight of the figure standing there, missing 1 arm, covered in blood, yet resolutely upright, his pupils constricted sharply. The figure standing amidst the devastated battlefield was none other than the Dark Lord. Within him, a vast ocean-like surge of dark energy and living mystic power converged toward his severed arm. To everyone's astonishment, the severed arm was slowly regenerating in an extraordinarily gradual manner. Impossible! Zhang Tian's heart shook as he witnessed the Dark Lord rise. Since Sect Master Zhang claims the Flame Lord's fall disqualifies his victory, then now that the Dark Lord is still standing, doesn't the outcome speak for itself? On the martial god sect's side, a graceful figure emerged from the rear. It was Ling Qingzhu, who had recovered half of her strength. Her calm voice carried across the battlefield as she observed the disbelief etched on Zhang Tian's face. Zhang Tian was momentarily speechless in the face of Ling Qingzhu's words. To argue further with the martial god sect would not only fail to change the verdict, but also tarnish the reputation of the Wu Yuan sect among the onlookers. However, if he announced the martial god sect's victory, he would lose the chance to seize the millions of supreme spiritual liquid at stake. This resource could enable the martial god sect to grow into a rival of the Wu Yuan sect within a few years. Even so, the Wu Yuan sect had no intention of letting things end here. Although they suffered a loss in this battle, the future was long, and with the right pretext, they could slowly pressure the martial god sect into surrendering the supreme spiritual liquid. Heh, in that case, let's consider this wager settled with the martial god sect. Zhang Tian chuckled faintly, but just as he was about to declare the martial god sect's victory, an aged voice suddenly echoed across the heavens. In this final bout, in my opinion, it is your martial god sect that lost. The calm yet aged voice reverberated through the air, causing Zhang Tian to swallow the words he was about to utter. Meanwhile, the expressions of the martial god sect's members, including the Lord of Life and Death, shifted as they turned to look at the space in front of Zhang Tian. Buzz! The space before Zhang Tian rippled, and with a twist in the void, an elderly figure in crimson robes materialized. At the same time, an aura far surpassing Zhang Tian spread outward, causing the space within 10,000 feet to tremble slightly. Grand Elder, weren't you in seclusion? Zhang Tian and the others immediately displayed deference toward the figure before them. This elder was one of the founders of the Wu Yuan sect, a powerhouse at the peak of the 7th grade supreme. However, he had been in seclusion for decades. His sudden appearance now suggested that he might have broken through to the 8th grade supreme stage. Zhang Tian's lips curled into a cold smile. With such a formidable presence in their ranks, the martial god sect would no longer pose a threat. The appearance of the crimson-robed elder caused the martial god sect's members to pale visibly. "This elder, may I ask, what did you mean when you said the final round counted as a loss for our martial god sect?" Despite the fear the Lord of Life and Death and the others felt toward the red-robed elder's power, Ling Qingzhu's expression remained unchanged. Her demeanor was calm, even natural, showing no trace of fear. Instead, she flipped the 4-foot-long sword in her hand, and dazzling sword light spread out. "Humph! A mere second-grade supreme dares to speak to me in such a manner?" The red-robed elder let out a cold snort. Though he had seen Ling Qingzhu swiftly defeat a third-grade supreme from Wu Yuan's sect earlier, such strength was laughable against an 8th-grade supreme. Not even worth considering. "You want to know how you lost? Very well, I'll tell you." The red-robed elder clasped his hands behind his back, not angered by Ling Qingzhu's insolence. He looked at her, then at Qing Ji and the Lord of Life and Death, and said indifferently, "If I'm not mistaken, you all only broke free of the lower dimension shackles and arrived in the Great Thousand Worlds a month ago, correct?" The Lord of Life and Death and the others froze at his words, wondering what his point was. Could it be related to today's battle agreement? The red-robed elder slowly raised his palm, pointing at Ling Qingzhu. "I also know that, apart from you, everyone here only recently reached the supreme stage and hasn't even cultivated a supreme dharmakaya. Am I right?" "So what?" the Lord of Life and Death responded. "Heh, if that's the case, let me ask you this." The elder's hand shifted, now pointing at the unconscious Flame Lord below. "How does someone who just reached the supreme stage suddenly unleash power comparable to a 4th-grade supreme? If that was truly his own strength, then let me ask again. Why did using it leave him completely drained of all his energy?" The elder's words made everyone present realize the truth. Indeed, as he said, why had the Flame Lord fallen unconscious after unleashing such power? Others might not know, but I'm well aware. That wasn't his true strength. It was temporarily enhanced using some method, the elders stated coldly. In a battle of honor, using such tricks, ruling your martial god sect as the loser is already giving you face. Ling Qingzhu's eyes narrowed slightly at his words. The elder's piercing gaze seemed to catch every detail. "Yet, it's not that you gave us face. It's that we showed you mercy by not driving you off this continent entirely," Ling Qingzhu replied. As the elder's words faded, a calm voice suddenly echoed across the heavens, seemingly coming from nowhere yet resounding everywhere. "Who's there?" The unexpected voice made the red-robed elder's eyes narrow in alarm. A vague sense of danger gripped him, forcing him to summon all his energy. However, when he extended his divine sense across the surrounding 10,000 miles, a terrifying aura descended upon the entire mountain range. This overwhelming pressure didn't target the martial god sect. It was directed solely at the elder and his allies. The suffocating aura caused the red-robed elder's face to pale, his body turning stiff. Behind him, the leaders of the Wu Yuan sect and their allied forces were similarly immobilized, their gazes fixed on the martial god sect side. Buzz. In front of Ling Qingzhu, a figure silently appeared. It was a young man clad in black, his appearance plain and unassuming. Yet, his eyes seemed to pierce through the fabric of space itself. Ling Qingzhu turned to look at the man beside her. Beneath her calm exterior, a flicker of uncontainable emotion stirred. Behind her, the Lord of Life and Death and the others stared in stunned silence before joy erupted across their faces. It's Big Brother. Little Mink and Little Flame were overcome with excitement at the sight of the newcomer. Lin Qingtan and countless others stared at the figure who always appeared at the most critical moments. He had become the faith of the entire martial god sect. The one who had emerged was none other than Lin Dong, fresh from completing the dimensional baptism. Throughout the mountain range, all eyes were fixed on this new arrival. This figure was unfamiliar to most, yet for everyone within the martial god sect of the Wu Yuan dimension, he was a well-known presence. He was none other than the divine ancestor, the one who repelled the invasion of the 4 extraterritorial demon clans: Alien Demon Clan, Blood Demon Clan, Devouring Demon Clan, and swallowing demon clan, and safeguarded the entire dimension. The martial ancestor, Lin Dong. Big brother. A voice called from behind, and soon 3 figures flew forward to stand beside Lin Dong. They were Lin Diao, Little Yin, and Lin Qingzhu, who had grown up alongside him. Though only a month had passed since they last met, Lin Dong now radiated an utterly transformed aura. Even ancestral realm experts could only bow before him in submission. Big brother, these guys look down on us because we're from a lower dimension and try to extort us, Little Yin said, pointing at the Wu Yuan sect members. At this moment, they were immobilized under Lin Dong's oppressive aura, unable even to open their mouths. Lin Dong smiled faintly upon seeing Lin Diao and the others. He then took the delicate hand of Ling Qingzhu beside him and said, "I'm late. Leave the rest to me." "Late? Do you think I don't know you've been here the whole time, just watching?" Ling Qingzhu shot him a glance and continued, "The sudden surge in Flame Lord's power. Was that your doing?" Hearing this, Lin Dong could only offer a wry smile. He hadn't expected her senses to be so sharp. Even though he had undergone a complete transformation and ascended to a new realm, she still saw through him. The 3rd grade supreme was already Flame Lord's limit. But knowing I was nearby, he stubbornly forced himself to accept the power of a 4th grade supreme. It's only natural he passed out afterward. Hearing Lin Dong's explanation, the Lord of Life and Death and the others finally understood why Flame Lord's power had skyrocketed tenfold in mere moments. It was Lin Dong's secret assistance, the martial god sect. Lin Dong's gaze swept across the massive sea of people behind him. The black mass of figures numbered in the tens of billions, a mix of strong and weak, young and old. This was perhaps the largest sect he had ever seen. As he spoke, his eyes turned to the Wu Yuan sect members ahead. With a single thought, the oppressive aura enveloping them dissipated. At the same time, Lin Dong's calm voice echoed toward them. "I heard this mountain range was unclaimed land. Yet your Wu Yuan sect demanded supreme spiritual liquid from us." The booming voice reverberated in the ears of the Wu Yuan sect members, who had just been freed from the oppressive force. The red-robed elder and Zhang Tian were left speechless, not daring to argue. They knew the man before them wasn't just any supreme stage expert. His terrifying power had far surpassed that realm. This was a true Earth Supreme. Though the red-robed elder was an 8th grade Supreme, in the presence of an Earth Supreme, he was no more than an ant. Earth Supremes were pinnacle-level existences in the vast and boundless Great Thousand Worlds. The fact that this martial god sect from a lower dimension could be connected to such a transcendent figure left the red-robed elder and Zhang Tian reeling with disbelief. Could Flame Lord's sudden surge in power have been linked to this Earth Supreme? Surely, sir. You must be a great figure in the Great Thousand Worlds. Why would you involve yourself in the squabbles of smaller dimensions like ours? The red-robed elder spoke with a respectful tone as he regarded Lin Dong. He assumed that someone as powerful as an Earth Supreme must have a notable reputation in the Great Thousand Worlds. Knowing his origins might provide a way to negotiate. However, the elder and the entire Wu Yuan sect were unaware that Lin Dong and everyone in the martial god sect came from the same dimension. Lin Dong's response, however, sent chills down their spines. "Of course I'm interested," Lin Dong said coldly, his gaze brimming with icy intent. "Because I've noticed that people from the Great Thousand Worlds seem to enjoy bullying those from lower dimensions." Lin Dong's words detonated like a bomb in the hearts of the Wu Yuan sect members. People from the Great Thousand Worlds? This young man was also from a lower dimension. "Since you've said so, sir, how do you propose we resolve this?" The red-robed elder asked Lin Dong. Everyone knew that once individuals from the lower dimensions broke free from their constraints, their strength would inevitably skyrocket in the Great Thousand Worlds. Although there were currently fewer than 10 individuals who had just entered the supreme stage, given a few decades of growth, they might rise to a level not inferior to that of the Wu Yuan sect. A single mountain cannot house 2 tigers. Thus, it was natural for Wu Yuan sect and other factions to worry that the rise of the martial god sect would flatten the entire 4 profound continents, potentially affecting the neighboring heaven desolate continent as well. Faced with such a critical threat to their survival, The red-robed elder and Zhang Tian were unlikely to make any concessions. I have two suggestions, or you could call them two choices, Lin Dong said. What are they? Asked the red-robed elder and the others immediately. The first suggestion is this. This mountain range is identical to a region in our dimension, and as far as I know, it's unclaimed territory. For the time being, we'll use it as our base. You have no grounds to seize even a drop of supreme spiritual liquid from us. In the future, we won't encroach on your territories. However, I will create a new continent in the nearby seas of this land. That new continent will serve as our domain, and from then on, there will be no conflict between us and your continent, Lin Dong explained. Upon hearing this, the red-robed elder was overjoyed. Lin Dong's words clearly indicated he had no intention of targeting the four profound continents, and there was no need to worry about betrayal. With Lin Dong's current power, he could easily sweep through both the four profound continents and the heaven desolate continent. His choice to create a new continent suggested he would have even less interest in these regions in the future. They were also astonished by his claim. Creating a new continent was an ability likely reserved for someone of Earth's supreme level like Lin Dong. And what is your second suggestion or choice? The red-robed elder asked Lin Dong, intrigued by the alternative. After all, they could always choose the first option if the second proved disadvantageous. The second suggestion is to unify this continent with the neighboring heaven desolate continent, along with the martial god sect, to form a single unified power, Lin Dong said flatly. His calm words plunged the entire area into a deathly silence. Not only were the factions on the Wu Yuan sect side rendered speechless by shock, but even the Lord of Life and Death and others from the martial god sect looked at Lin Dong in astonishment. The unification Lin Dong proposed wasn't a mere alliance, but a complete merger into a massive new faction. Old factions like the Wu Yuan sect would disappear entirely from the continent. Grand Elder, I think we should adopt the first suggestion and allow them to settle in the mountain range for 100 years, Zhang Tian said to the red-robed elder. Lin Dong's second suggestion was tantamount to erasing all the factions on the four profound continents and the heaven desolate continent. Although this erasure wouldn't result in bloodshed, it could be even more terrifying in its complete restructuring of power. Behind Zhang Tian, many powerful figures from the Wu Yuan sect and other sect leaders nodded in agreement. Even a fool could see the first option was preferable. Remaining a major force on the four profound continents was far better than becoming a subordinate in a larger faction. The only benefit of the second option would be the protection of an Earth supreme-level powerhouse. The countless individuals scattered throughout the mountain range were equally stunned by Lin Dong's proposals. However, given his overwhelming strength, sweeping through the two continents by force would be effortless. His current suggestions merely avoided bloodshed, though the end result would be the same. Lin Dong, I think we should go with the first option, the Lord of Life and Death and others said to Lin Dong. For those who had ruled over these two continents, the second option was simply too difficult to accept. They would have made the same choice. There's no rush. I think things are about to get more interesting, Lin Dong said with a faint smile, turning his gaze toward the crowds in the mountain range. Amidst the sea of people, several presences rivaling the strength of a 7th grade supreme could be sensed, most likely top-tier experts from the heaven desolate continent. Hearing Lin Dong's cryptic words, the Lord of Life and Death and the others were puzzled. They couldn't understand why Lin Dong would propose such suggestions. Still, since he clearly had his own plans, they chose not to ask further and waited quietly for the others. All eyes in the world turned to the elder in the crimson robe. At this moment, everyone was awaiting the response of the figure regarded as the foremost leader of the four profound continents. Just as everyone assumed he would undoubtedly choose the first option, the elder instead responded calmly. Before I make a choice, may I ask a few questions? Feel free, Lin Dong replied. If you intend to unify the two continents, may I ask, by what means do you plan to achieve this? The crimson-robed elder inquired. I won't resort to violent unification, Lin Dong said plainly, but I can't offer you much either. At most, I can guarantee that on the path of cultivation within the supreme stage, you will advance by at least 1 grade. Additionally, every supreme expert will receive 100,000 drops of supreme spiritual liquid. Lin Dong's calm words sent a jolt through everyone present. Advancing by 1 grade in strength and receiving 100,000 drops of supreme spiritual liquid, such benefits were staggering. The crimson-robed elder's expression froze momentarily. It had taken him nearly a century to break through from the 7th grade supreme to the 8th grade supreme. As for the 9th grade supreme, he feared it might take him over 100 years, if he could reach it at all. If Lin Dong could truly help him ascend to the 9th grade supreme, he would rank among the elite even within the Great Thousand Worlds. It wasn't just the crimson-robed elder who was taken aback. Even figures like Zhang Tian and the others were momentarily stunned. However, they believed that this Earth Supreme expert, hailing from a lower dimension, might indeed be capable of fulfilling such promises. Amid the astonishment, the crimson-robed elder's gaze shifted to the skies above the surrounding mountain ranges. His calm voice echoed outward, "Tianyuan old ghost, Mengxian, do you not intend to show yourselves?"